Our culture attacks fatherhood by trying to make it irrelevant. And part of that is we've done that to ourselves as men. We've become workaholics. We've become addicted to ESPN, to pornography, to all kinds of things that take us away from time with our children. And the culture is built on that. And it just disrespects fatherhood by just saying it doesn't really matter if you're there or not.
Men have lost the sense of mission when it comes to family, and so that's created a passivity. That passivity robs men of what their role is supposed to be.
As men, if we're living for ourselves, we will become passive. That's just built within our nature. Our nature is one of service. Our nature is one of challenge and continuing growth. A good father is the one that he can still enjoy the football game, but he does so in a way where he's somewhat detached because his main focus in life is his wife and his children. That is his vocation.
We have a lot of young people growing up with absent fathers or with no fathers. The church is starved for fatherhood. Answering that call really means stepping up to be an example of Christ's love in their own families, in their parish communities, and in the world.
To be a spiritual leader of a family means to be convinced that the fatherhood of God is imaged in the father within the family. It brings the fatherhood of God close to the children. I have Mass every Easter and every Christmas in prisons. And prisons are an example of fatherless America. Hardly any prisoners have a father in their life, a man of significance in their life. Those men respond to me as a spiritual father. There's often tears during Mass because I don't think they've had a father in their life.
The father's role is to impart to his children and to image the love of God the Father. And what's that love like? It's unconditional. This is a great and deep longing of every human heart, to be loved, to be known, to be seen, to be chosen, right? And God placed this love in our hearts, and he brings it to life through our earthly fathers. And this is what allows a child to flourish.
Authority doesn't mean I get to tell you what to do. That's a secular view of that. It is, I've been granted authority over you so that I could form you. When men abdicate that responsibility, it leaves their children fatherless. But when you just abdicate, you're robbing your children of one of the most significant influences in their life.
We can think of the virtuous life like a sailboat. You have to have the sail to catch the wind. And I think what we have to have is the skills and the habits to work, to be prudent, to be just, to be honest. And so it's the opportunities of these relational obligations and challenges of being a good father, being a good husband, that then become the iron furnace that forge a character.
I was in spring training playing for the Kansas City Royals, and my clubhouse manager runs in and says, hey, Swains, your wife's water broke. You got to get to the house right away. So I take off, run into my car. I pull into the house, and my in-laws are in the front porch. Mom, Dad, is the baby here already? And they're like, no, it's my first time doing this. Late that night, I'll never forget the image of the crown of his head, and then his body, and then his scream. The moment the child is born, it's life-changing. I yell, Michael, Michael, Daddy's here. And he's about 3 minutes old. And he looks over and my hand was up and he grabbed my finger. And I began to weep. And it was like the Good Shepherd. The sheep know his voice. The sheep follow him. Man, my little son, 3 minutes old, already knew my voice. The greatest role of a father is to lead his spouse and his children to heaven. I'm grateful that my father gave me the role of a good shepherd. I've seen God the Father in my father at home every day, praying with us, working hard to provide for us, going to Mass every Sunday of our lives. When we'd go camping or to a baseball tournament, the first thing he would do is go into the yellow pages of a phone book and see the closest Catholic church around. And I know my father said growing up, son, you're never gonna know how much I love you until you have a son of your own someday. I cannot be a good father to my 6 children unless I am a good son to God the Father. And that means getting up in the morning and spending time reading God's word. It means humbly serving my wife and loving her like Ephesians 5 says, like Christ loved the church. Well, our culture today is all about me, but being a great father is about putting the spotlight on, number 1, Christ. Number 2, our wives. Number 3, our children. Humility is not thinking less of yourself, but thinking of yourself less often. It's thinking, I'm a child of God. I'm called to be a saint. And I'm not going to think of myself. I'm going to pour myself into everyone else. That's humility. On the baseball field, it's called being a good teammate. It's considering your other teammates is more important than yourself. As a major league ball player, I had almost 2,000 hits, and people say, oh man, that was a great accomplishment. And it was. But what I like to share with them is that I made over 4,000 outs. As a father, there have been many great moments, but there have also been many moments where I've had to go to my children and say, will you forgive me? Humility is all about. It's about asking for forgiveness. It's about going to God the Father. The reason why we have so many young people falling away from their faith is because fathers aren't living out their faith. Oftentimes, my teammates who didn't have a father like I did may say, how can you identify with the loving God? You may have a father that left you. You may have a father that abused you. You may have a father you never even knew. But the God that we know, that we love, is one coming towards us when we don't deserve it. He's the one that's going to put a robe on our backs, put a ring on us and call us his beloved. He's going to kill his fattened calf and throw a party for us when we come to him. The future of my children depends on who I am in this home today. My kids see me going to confession every month. They see me dropping them off at school and going to daily mass because they know that I want to be filled up with Christ. But the steps begin with me pouring into Christ, and then Christ pouring into me, and then me pouring into my family. I don't want to just be a good dad. I want to be the greatest dad ever. My desire is that through God's grace that I'd be a saint.
The primary way that we as men protect our families is spiritually, is to be the spiritual head of the household that we're called and created to be. They have to be able to see in us, not just hear from us, see in us a genuine spiritual life, a genuine sacramental life. And they need to see how obvious it is that dad loves his faith. We need to do our parenting on our knees.
And that's what we need to do as men. We need to set the example of prayerfulness. We need to set the example of regular attendance to Mass and the other sacraments. And if we do that, children are natural-born imitators. They're going to do what they see us do.
We think, well, I'll make sure I take my kids to church on Sundays and they'll be good. Or I'm going to send my kid to a Catholic school so they're, the faith box is checked, they're taken care of. No, that's just meant to complement what you're doing in the house. So if you're not partaking in regular prayer, reading the Bible, and saying the rosary, that's the father's job.
We as fathers literally need to be guards in the doors of our children's souls, because everything that comes in through their eyes or through their ears, it will change them. So what we do at home, for example, is we don't have any electronic devices, television or computers, in private rooms. We have them out in common areas, in the living room. We need to be very alert because the devil wants to sneak into our houses, and he's not gonna do it through the front door. He's gonna do it through these new electronic devices that have come into society. These are not evil in themselves. Technology is not evil, but the use that we give to technology makes all the difference.
Men are called to evangelize and catechize to their children. If you look at historically how the faith is passed along, the man plays an active role in faiths that survive long term. If a man pays attention to the evangelization and catechesis of his children, they're going to take it seriously.
I think as men, for us, the challenge for us is to, if we're a father, take responsibility to educate your children. Take responsibility to form them, because it's our duty first and foremost. And then be willing to fight, whether it's a Catholic school or a CCD program or any kind of catechesis program. Be willing to fight so that it's proclaiming authentic teachings of Jesus Christ and his church.